Let's see, yay! E siamo su YouTube. Benvenuti tutti. Now let me start the record and we will begin. Buonasera e benvenuti. Welcome to the second day of our journey towards the Italian you, towards your Italian fluency and your Italian identity. We started yesterday with the 7 capital sins, I 7 peccati capitali. And that was the dramatic name we gave to the 7 major pitfalls that language learners, especially learners of Italian, face on their way to fluency, and also the 7 main reasons they give up before they can show anything for their efforts, right? So today, oggi, today, we are going to dive into pitfall number 4. That is la grammatica. So all those who said, oh, la grammatica, the grammar, I hate it so much, so many verbs, so many tenses, so many things to remember, a lot of stuff doesn't make much sense, a lot of cramming, not for me. So I'm going to work very hard, not just me. You're going to meet one of my teaching team members today, and we are going to work very hard to help you fall in love with grammar, innamorarsi della grammatica italiana. Before we begin, just a fair warning. The chat is not active at the moment. It will become active once I have a question for you, and it will happen in just a second. But before that, I just have to share this. As yesterday, any kind of negativity in the chat or in the Facebook community will be punished by a ban, a lifetime ban from the bootcamp and any kind of 7-week Italian activities, free or paid. So don't be negative, okay? I hope that's convincing enough. And again, the chat is there for you to answer my questions or to ask your own questions. And we'll have a lot of both today. Bene, that said, cominciamo. We can begin, hopefully. So let me just share my screen because I have a question for you. Yesterday, I asked you to remember. Actually, I asked you to choose before the remembering part. Yesterday, I asked you to choose one Italian verb that would represent your 2025, your Italian 2025. Vi ho chiesto di scegliere un verbo per il 2025, 2025. Chi se lo ricorda? Who remembers the verb? Go ahead and, yeah, okay, I should have turned on the chat. Just a second. Here you go. Guys, the chat is all yours. Tell me your verb from yesterday. Condividi il tuo verbo. Ok, we have comunicare, trasformarsi, crescere, trasformarsi, stupire, parlare, sfondare, to break through, sfondare, beautiful. Emozionare, comunicare, progredire, to progress. Volare, okay, loving it, guys. A lot of progredire, to make progress, a lot of trasformarsi, to transform, inspired by yesterday's transformation talk, right? Benissimo, molto bene. Who doesn't remember the verb at all? Chi non si ricorda il verbo per nulla? At all. Say io, I-O, io in the chat, that means me. Okay, we have something like 200 messages with verbs and about maybe 10 saying io. Okay, now this game, actually we need it for, not tomorrow, for actually tomorrow. Yeah, the verb, the vocabulary session is tomorrow, retaining vocabulary. So tomorrow you will find out why I asked you to remember your verb. Please hold on to it. If you can, write it down somewhere, maybe already print it and put it on your Italian vision board in your Italian temple. Now, vi ho anche chiesto di ricordarvi le due parole del mindset, le due parole più importanti. I asked you to remember, to take away, if you were just going to take away 2 Italian words from the whole session, and they were more than 20, just in case you missed them, these 2, who remembers them? Put them in the chat in Italian. Condividi le tue parole adesso. Brava Nadia. Bravo Chris. Okay, but I asked for two words in Italian. They are cognates with English. Cognates, when I say cognates, I mean that the English word and the Italian word are both similar in spelling partially and in meaning. That's what a cognate is. Okay, so a lot of you remember the 2 words that, of course, prospettiva e percezione. And these 2 words, perspective and perception, were one of the most important messages when it came to your mindset. So every time your lizard brain acts out, think about these two words. Prospettiva, always choose perspective over perception, because your perception is filtered through the eyes of the lizard or through the hypothalamus, your lizard brain, who is trying to stop you from doing anything new or exciting. And learning Italian is something very new and something very something that takes you out of your comfort zone. Brava Denise, brava Trish. And some of you even spelled it correctly, guys. Well done. All right. Very quickly, we have 2 winners from yesterday's takeaways on the takeaway post. And normally it's 1 winner, but I couldn't. Sharon and John, they were great, both of them. Sharon says, I need to change my way of thinking about how I'm learning Italian. I think I've always viewed learning a language as basically a brain dump of information from an instructor to a student who is expected to memorize. It becomes an overload of sometimes useless information. I do appreciate the idea of transformation so much. So thank you, Sharon. And I love the way you put it. So yes, normally the traditional methods, what they do, they just throw information at you like spaghetti on the wall, hoping something would stick, maybe. And usually something does, and then it just slides right off the wall, obviously. And then John, I loved your angle on the lesson as well. John says the first lesson was not only interesting, but encouraging and, dare I say, inspiring. It made me believe that thinking in Italian is possible. So John represents those of you, a very, very big percentage of you actually, who fell in love, maybe not yesterday, maybe before, but fell in love with the idea of Italian identity through the language and thinking in Italian. Okay, so that's what we're going to try and do during the bootcamp. So today, it's all about grammar. We are on day 2, martedì 25 febbraio. This is the language circle, la ruota della lingua. We have grammatica, abilità linguistiche, language skills, la pronuncia e il vocabolario. Now, if you look really, really closely, you will notice that These are actually the 4 days that we have ahead of us. Grammatica, grammar, today, oggi. Language skills, going to happen on day 4 with thinking and, okay, let's go the other way. Grammatica today. Vocabulary, retaining and getting off the hamster wheel tomorrow. Then we'll talk about pronunciation, and then we'll come to language skills that include thinking, which are all of them are also the fastest way to fluency. Okay, so maybe draw this in your little bootcamp notebook and try to score yourself from 1 to 5. Just color it in, color these levels in for all 4 of these. Okay, and that's what makes of you a fluent speaker. If your grammar is at has certain substance to it, where when your language skills are well developed, when you have enough vocabulary to manage a conversation, a communication event, and when you are respecting the language and pronouncing the sounds correctly, thus allowing yourself to understand and others to understand you. That's also important. No one ever takes that into consideration. Okay, guys. Carmen says, I like the expression, we had to learn the language like throwing spaghetti on the wall. So true. Yes, that's the way I usually describe the traditional teaching methods, because that's the feeling I always got from it. Now, this is a question for you guys. Cos'è la grammatica? Can you describe it? Like, can you kind of, do not tell me quella cosa che odio, that thing that I hate. That's not a good definition, although it might be true for many of you, and it is. Oh, Sherry says, I bought your book. Okay, Sherry, if you bought my book, go to the capital sins and you'll find 3 more in addition to the 7 from yesterday. Okay, but you'll agree that we didn't have time for 3 more. Okay, so we have the structure and usage of the language, rules and structure, foundation of language, Michela, speaking words in proper order, word order. That's something we're going to do a lot of today. Basic rules, says Bernadette. Structure of communication, that's very interesting. Structure of the language, sentence structure and meaning, intentions of ideas. Set of rules that govern how words are used in a language. All right, Kathy, not bad. Different aspects of language broken down into its parts, word, sentence structure, verbs, structure of sentence. Syntax, okay, that's also part of grammar, but grammar is not syntax. Syntax is a little microscopic, not very microscopic, but one of the branches of grammar. Language framework, loving the language framework. And so guys, to stop hating grammar, per non odiare più la grammatica, we need to understand what is it exactly. Dobbiamo capire cos'è. So grammar is a set of rules explaining how a language works through repeated patterns. There are formulas that your teachers and apps or whatever you've been using have been trying to communicate to you. And these formulas explain or attempt an explanation in a very structured and organized way of the why of the language behavior, why the language behaves the way it does, why words and sentences are structured the way they're structured. Now, what we need to remember that it's not first comes the language, then comes the grammar. So it's not perfect and it's not exhaustive at all. It's an attempt of varying degrees of success to squeeze the language, which is a living, breathing, and very often kicking thing, into a rather rigid frame that doesn't always manage to contain it. I do hope this is clear. So like this kitty here, there's a box. It did it best, but some parts of it spill around the box. And that's the same with grammar rules. So when learning grammar, please keep this in mind. We attempt to squeeze grammar into this framework. We attempt to squeeze the language into this framework. It doesn't always work. Now, great news, buone notizie. Everyone who says or thinks that they are unable to retain grammar, you can relax, because you are, like every human being on this earth, wired with a grammar instinct. We, as human beings, are born with a grammar instinct. This is something that has been proven in the 60s, 70s. They did a lot of studies, and it turned out that grammar instinct is something that we are pre-wired with. Okay, so this is Steven Pinker. His book, The Grammar Instinct, is what you should take a look at if this interests you. It's nothing about Italian, but just about how the brain processes language and interacts with grammar structures. Una domanda. Perché la grammatica è il vostro tallone d'Achille? For those of you who admitted to grammar being their Achilles heel, could you please tell me why is that? Go ahead in the chat. Past experiences, Francesca. Marilyn, the exceptions to the rules make it an Achilles heel. Wonderful. Let's hold on to this, what Marilyn says. So many exceptions, so you can't handle the rules. And sometimes, and that's true, sometimes Italian grammar offers more exceptions than rules. Or like the rule, something is presented as a rule, and then you find out that actually the exceptions are more. Like in the case of irregular verbs, for example. And Connie says, my English grammar is not great to start with. Connie, actually, this is not a bad thing at all. You will be much less confused. Perché è molto diverso dall'inglese. Oli, okay, that's also a good way to look at the challenge. You have to remember so much, yes. I like grammar, says Murad, but find myself tripping over it when I'm trying to speak my thoughts, when I'm trying to express my thoughts. Okay, so sometimes grammar doesn't connect to a situation of communication. That's also, I'm sure you're not the only one. Now, all the things that you said are true, important, and you are in good company for most of them, if not all of them. But the real reason, or the reason that sums it all up, is the real reason for grammar being our Achilles heel, is the fact that our adult brain doesn't just agree to retain grammar rules without a very good explanation and without a very good reason. Okay, so when someone tells you, in the Italian language works like this is how it works. When this, then this. Without the why, and that's how it is. Learn it by heart, go home, do your homework, come back, remember this, reproduce it. It doesn't work like that. The adult brain requires a why. Il nostro cervello vuole una spiegazione. Vogliamo prima capire il perché. We first need to understand the why behind something. Without the why, it just slides off. Without the why, well, think about it. Our brains are oversaturated. There's so much, they're bombarded with information. There's so much coming at us all the time. So we have developed this reaction to new information that keeps what fits into pre-existing patterns or fits into our needs or somehow engages us emotionally or has a very good explanation. And everything else that doesn't fit into one of these boxes, we just let it go. So we need an explanation. We need to know why something happens. And we need it to be organized, structured, and to fit into a pattern that we already have in our brain. So if we perceive it as chaotic, vague, or unclear, and that's the case of many grammar rules, we will not retain it. And as I said, if it doesn't fit into a pre-existing pattern, what do I mean by that? A pattern is like when I use a metaphor, when yesterday I used the metaphor of feeding you once or giving you a recipe or teaching you how to cook, it's a situation that you immediately knew how things work there. So I leveraged a pattern that already existed to allow you to understand my message quicker, to allow you to connect with my message. That's a pattern. That's what the metaphors and the similitudes we use usually leverage. So obviously, this question is, so how do we make sense of Italian grammar? Come possiamo dare senso alla grammatica? How do we bend it to allow us to perceive it as not chaotic, fits into patterns, and just, so we can retain it? To do that, we need to understand this. Language, any language, is shaped by the minds of its speakers, which means that all parts of a language reflect the mentality of the speakers, of the culture. Okay, so language is the mirror of a culture. Now, if you understand some or most of the elements that make up this linguistic and cultural mentality, it will make grammar retention much more fluid, if not seamless. Okay? So, to show you what I mean by that, to appeal to an existing pattern or to create a new one that would fit nicely, we're going to play a game. And Francesco is going to help me. Francesco, show yourself for a second. Here we are. Ciao,
Ciao a
Francesco.
tutti. Hi everyone. Ciao. So, I'm Francesco.
Presentati. Yep. Vai.
Sono Francesco, I'm Francesco, e sono un tutor qui a 7 Week Italian. So I'm Francesco and I'm a tutor here at 7 Week Italian. Ciao a tutti quelli che stanno scrivendo nella chat. So hello to all those who are writing in the chat. Thank you for your
Visto che carini che ti dicono
lovely
ciao a tutti.
greetings. Che carino. I
So,
already like you.
yeah, you are.
I
What we're going to do
Mhm.
is we're going to play a game where we're going to explain the same grammar rule of Italian, which has to do with, Francesco,
L'articolo determinativo.
l'articolo determinativo. Can you guess what that is? The definite article. So if you've never learned it, no worries. This is not about teaching you the article, but if you get it, that's fine. But if you feel it, you need a few more times, that's also fine. We just want to illustrate the differences between teaching you a grammar topic with a traditional method, and that's where Francesco is going to help me,
Mhm.
and presenting then the same grammar topic by leveraging all the things that I just presented, or to put it in other words, teach it through the lens of our holistic 3D method, the way we do it with our students. And this comes from our beginners program. Okay? So, Francesco, take it away. Vuoi
Ok,
che condivido io o vuoi condividere tu?
come vuoi.
Siamo
Condivido.
sicuri che siamo sullo stesso?
Sì, sì, se vuoi condivido io, condivido io.
Vai, condividi tu.
Ok, so let me share my screen. It should be loading, and now you should be seeing it. Just a second, let me move this. Let me press on Presenta. And here we are. So, Presenta a schermo intero. Oops. Is it working?
Sì, clicca giù, clicca su
Ok,
presenta giù.
sì, Presenta,
Eh,
certo. So, now you should all be seeing my screen. We are talking about, parliamo dell'articolo determinativo, the definite article. Bene, that's the definite article we use with masculine noun. In the singular, if we want to talk about a gatto, gatto is a masculine noun, we use il gatto, and here it is. In the plural, it would be I gatti, I gatti. So with masculine nouns, we have il in the singular and I in the plural. What about feminine nouns? If we are talking about a gatta, a female cat, the article is la. Il gatto, la gatta. And the plural, so if we are talking about gatte, female cats, the article is le. So la and le are feminine articles, il and I are masculine articles. What if a word starts with a vowel? It's a sort of exception. It should be lo, but lo occhio becomes actually l'occhio, so that o disappears. La o scompare, and with occhio, that's to say a word beginning with a vowel, we have l apostrophe, L with an apostrophe. In the plural, lo and L apostrofo become gli occhi. So, I, la, le, lo, gli. What about feminine nouns beginning with a vowel? We've already mentioned that the article for feminine nouns is la. When a feminine noun starts with an O, such as opera, I'm sure I don't need to translate it, it becomes l'opera, so L apostrophe, L apostrofo. What about the plural? It stays le opere. So, I, lo, or L apostrofo, gli, la, le, L apostrofo, le. Easy, isn't it? What about words beginning with one of the following letter or letter combination? If we have a masculine noun starting with an S and a consonant, that's to say, each letter, which is not an A, an E, an I, an O, or an U, we have lo. If we're talking about a student, the Italian for student is studente. It starts with S and T, and the article is lo. The same thing applies to words starting with a Z or a Z. Lo zio, the uncle. The same thing applies to words starting with P and S, such as psychologist, lo psicologo, with words starting with la y, with the letter Y. To say yogurt, we say yogurt, and the article is lo, yogurt. Last but not least, words, masculine nouns starting with G and N, pronounced as ñ, also require the article lo, gnocco. In the plural, this lo will become gli studenti, gli zii, gli psicologi, gli yogurt, gli gnocchi. This also applies to words starting with X, such as xylophone, xylofono, or with PN to say tire. In Italian, we say pneumatico. These words are quite rare, but we also need lo if we want to say the xylophone, lo xylofono, or the tire, lo pneumatico. Here it is. That would be what your
Ok.
English primary school teacher would tell you.
Grazie Francesco. Now, interrompi pure la condivisione. Now, I have sacrificed poor Francesco to illustrate this for you. But in reality, he would have never taught the definite articles like that. Non l'avrebbe mai insegnato così.
No.
Because Francesco, like all of our teaching team, has been trained with the 3D method, applies it in his lessons, and he is a very talented teacher and tutor. So what we were trying to illustrate is that's how it's done. That's how like you are on the receiving end of a flow of information. This is how it is. This is how it's done. This is how it works. Bye-bye. That's basically how grammar is taught. I think you have all experienced it. We've experienced it at school, in Italian classes, and everywhere else. Now, we're not saying goodbye to Francesco. Non diciamo ciao a Francesco because he will help us with some more things today. But what I would like to do now is to go through the very same process with you. Except this time, I would like to apply what I said before, which is this. If you understand the elements of the language and the mentality of Italian, you will understand grammar. But someone needs to communicate these elements to you, right? So here we go. Same topic, an explanation with the 3D method. Before we even look at the topic, this is what we need to understand. As I said, la lingua italiana è lo specchio della cultura italiana. The Italian language is the mirror of the Italian culture. So this means that things that are fundamental and very important in the culture will also be fundamental and very, very important in the language. And there are more than three, but there are three main important things, three pillars that find their way into the language. First of all, gender. Is something masculine or feminine? Secondly, number. Is something one or many? And finally, the jewel of the crown, the most important thing in the Italian culture as well as in the language, phonetics, pronunciation. Does it flow? How does it sound? Is it easy to pronounce? Is it nice to hear? That's very important. This means that the Italian definite article, as well as most of the Italian grammar, is affected by these fundamental concepts, right? These three pillars of the culture and the language. And we're going to show how they are expressed in the structures of the definite article. So the definite article tells us and depends, but also communicates the gender of the noun, the number of the noun, and it also depends on how that word is pronounced or should be pronounced, or is better pronounced with that article. It will become clearer. Here we go. So the definite article, the masculine singular definite article, is il. The reason for that is that it's something that the proud grandfather of Italian, the Latin language, left it as a heritage, which means that ille was he in Latin, probably still is, but you know. So what's left of ille is il. And basically, when we say il something, we say the he thing. So when we say il gatto, we say he cat, a cat that is masculine. The plural of cat is gatti, and the article is I. We're not going to go into the etymology of every single article, but just for you to get an idea. The feminine counterpart of il is la. Why is that? It's not a random thing. In Latin, illa means she. So when we say la gatta, we are actually saying something you would even probably say in English, a she cat. Okay? So we have a he cat, il gatto, and a she cat. And that's the way we communicate the gender of a noun. Every single noun in Italian has a gender. It's kind of a big thing in the Italian culture to know if something is masculine or feminine. A lot changes, okay? Very patriarchal society. There's a whole thing, I'm not going to go into it. But if something is masculine or feminine, oh my God, if that matters. Something or someone. And the plural of la gatta is le gatte. Now, what I would like you to pay attention to right now is the fact that now that I have explained to you, I've given your brain an explanation for both il and la, for the etymology of these two microscopic words, these two articles. This has made it very or much easier for your brain to hold on to it, because it's not just random, okay, that's how it is. There's a reason. And when you give a reason to your brain, when you give it context, when you give it a structure, a pattern, it thrives. So through the article, we just communicated the number. We had the singular and the plural. And we also communicated this other information. Is something masculine or feminine? Now, the singular and plural are less problematic for anyone who is an English speaker or a French speaker or a German speaker. All of these languages are pretty good with plural and singular. That's less of a problem. But that's also a very, very important part of the concept of what is important. Okay, so keep this in mind, gender and number, the two pillars. And the third pillar is phonetics. And this is where things become really interesting. Please remember this. Rules, grammar rules, will be reshaped and bent out of shape to accommodate fluidity of articulation and a pleasant sound. The Italian culture, as well as the Italian language, is all about beauty. That's nothing new, right? I'm sorry, I'm making it a bit poetical, but trust me, this is how it is. So it's about a beautiful sound, a balanced flow of vowel sounds and consonant sounds, right? And it's about ease and fluidity of pronunciation and articulation. That's why the moment phonetical and articulation issues come up, we start bending the grammar. And this is how we do it. So if your noun, your feminine noun, like opera, and I'm working with a cognate here, please note, if it starts with a vowel, we cannot keep la as an article any longer, because try to say la opera, la opera. Try to say it in a flow of a conversation. La opera, la opera, la opera, la opera. Do it right now, seriously. Your mics are off. You will find out that it's very hard to pronounce two open vowel sounds, a and o, in a flow. So you whether need to merge them together, and you will hear yourself say la opera, la opera, la opera, l'opera, or you will have to artificially put a glottal stop there, la opera, which is not something the Italian language would ever agree to, right? You already know that. When we say le opere, the e sound is a closed sound, so it doesn't really bother the next sound. So we can have these two vowels in a row. The same thing happens with l'amica, the female friend, la amica, l'amica. The same thing happens with isola, island, and the same thing happens with, yeah, that's it, just these ones. So every time we have this situation, we need to remove one of the vowels to allow fluid articulation and pronunciation. Okay? So let's see what happens to the masculine nouns. The masculine nouns are, if they begin with a vowel, they would theoretically take the article il, right? Il occhio, il occhio. Try to say il occhio a lot of, many times in a row. Il occhio. Go ahead. Il occhio, il occhio, il occhio, il occhio, il occhio, il occhio. Yeah? It turns out that at the end, if you say it very, very quickly, and in a conversation you would say it very quickly, it becomes il occhio, l'occhio, 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 l'occhio. Okay? So that's how it works. So it cannot remain il, it has to become lo. And obviously we cannot have these two lo, occhio, these two sounds together. So our solution to this is to remove one of the os. So we are left with l'occhio, because we cannot have both of them, both these vowels. The plural version, to say many eyes, we would say gli occhi. Again, we have a closed vowel, e, a closed sound, and o, a more open sound, pronounced openly, so it doesn't bother us. The plural never makes problems, okay? The same with lo amico becomes l'amico, lo elefante becomes l'elefante. And this is basically the same mechanism that we saw, more or less a very similar mechanism that we saw with the feminine vowels, but the feminine nouns. But Francesco mentioned that we have all of these other masculine nouns that also get lo. What's the story there? What's their problem? Che problema c'è? Look at them closely. Look at these, at the beginning of these words. Lo studente, imagine it's il. Imagine instead of lo studente, it's il studente. If that were the case, we would have a cluster of consonants. Il, l, s, t. Il studente. Do you think Italian language likes 3 consonants in a row? Do we deal well with clusters of consonants? We do not. Assolutamente no. So you would say, okay, lo studente, if we use the usual article, it would be 3 consonants in a row. Psicologo as well. Gnocco maybe. But why is zio on yogurt? Why do you think it's just one, right? It's one, but the sound is double. Think about zio, lo zio, ts, ts. It may look like a single consonant, a single letter, but it's a sound that actually would not work with il. Il zio would be very hard to digest, both on the speaker side and listener side, right? So since Italian is seeking beauty and balance, it needs to split that cluster of consonants to avoid having 3 consonants in a row. It will be very, very, very rare in Italian to have 3 consonants in a row. So here we can solve it by transforming the article instead of il using lo. So we have a little vowel there in front of the 2 consonants. Okay? So this makes things, hopefully, a bit different. So go ahead and tell me, once I've reactivated your chat, here we go, the chat is all yours. What is the difference? Qual è la differenza? What is the difference between these 2 approaches in your words? How is it different? Just getting the information as is, or looking at the language through a holistic lens? All right, so we have understanding the reason makes so much sense. Thank you. Now I know why. Oh my God, this is so quick. 3D, understanding the why, not just the rows of the outcomes. Yes, Ingrid, thank you. Exactly. That's the idea of the 3D method, because you see things in 3 dimensions. That's one of the reasons it's called 3D. Understanding versus remembering, very well said. Easier to add concept to my understanding. Context, I think you meant context, right? But yes, my autocorrect does that as well, transforms context into concept. Very clean approach to understanding. Thank you, Georgie. Answers the why. Understanding è più chiaro, dice Dominic. Okay, thank you guys. So hopefully this gives you an idea of how you yourself can approach the language. Every single time you are faced with an exception to a rule or something doesn't make sense, do this for me. Ask yourself, is this thing, is it about gender? Is it about number? Or is it about phonetics? Now, when it comes to exceptions, a lot of them are going to be about phonetics. And you know why? Because Italian seeks flow and balance. And it will shape and bend the grammar to achieve that. That's a very important thing to remember. So every single exception, not all of them, but every single exception you come across, ask yourself, can we blame that search of balance and beauty? Can we blame phonetics, ease of articulation, and flow of sound? And most times you will realize, oh, that's what it is. And that's when it becomes so much easier to retain, because you have the why. Okay, so hopefully this was very quick, of course, but hopefully this helps you to understand. Now, I want to talk to you about something you have already mentioned, and we have some time to do it. I want to talk to you about the most common mistake that you guys or every non-native speaker makes. What do you think that mistake is? Like, define it, like the broader possible version of that. Annette, wrong word order. That's, yep, that might not be your first bootcamp. Sentence structure, forgetting accents, gender, wrong verb ending, overthinking, yes. You are all correct, guys. But if we had to put it in just one phrase, the most common grammar mistake in Italian is reproducing the grammatical structures of your first language and sometimes of your second language, if you use it a lot, in Italian. So you illegally import structures and patterns from your language into Italian, and you try to bend Italian into those patterns. And 9 times out of 10, it will not sound Italian. So we need only the complete and absolute beginners to say io in the chat. Only the complete and absolute beginners. Who are our beginners? Exactly, 100%. Okay, io. Right. Bene, bene. Oh my God, so many. That's wonderful. Well done, guys. Ok, Francesco, dove sei? Fatti vedere. Oof, so many. Wonderful.
Sono qua.
So, we are going to play. Francesco is going to guide us through a little game very quickly. But you can only participate if you said io, if you are an absolutely complete beginner. Va bene? Sì? Vai, Francesco.
Ok. Condividi tu, condivido io?
Guarda, tengo io.
Perfetto. So, what can you see here, dear absolute beginners? Che cos'è questo? What's this? Well, of course, it's a car, you're right. And to be precise, it's a red car, just like a Ferrari. A red car. And that's the Italian for car. The Italian for car is macchina. Macchina. Ending with an A, with an A, pronounced A. Now, how can we describe this car? We've already mentioned that this car is red. How do we say red, though? We have 4 ways of saying red. We have rosso, rossa, rossi, and rosse. If we are talking about the macchina, which one would you pick? Rosso, rossa, rossi, rosse. I'm reading it in the chat. You're right. You should be picking rossa. Macchina rossa. Very good. So we've mentioned the various definite articles we use in Italian, and the one for macchina would be la. La is the correct article for macchina. So, how do we say the red car? We have all the elements here on the screen. We have la, we have rossa, we have macchina. Well, actually, there are many people writing the correct answer. Very good. However, some of you are writing la rossa macchina. However, that is not the way we would say it in Italian. We put rossa, which is an adjective, a describing word, after macchina. La macchina rossa. So that's the correct way of saying it. Once again, what's the biggest mistake we make while learning a new language? Is forcing the rules, the grammatical structure of our first language into the new one. What shouldn't we do? We shouldn't bring the grammatical structure of English or of your first language, of your native language, into Italian. That won't work. Of course, we can use the grammatical elements of our own language to explain a phrase in Italian and to translate it, to make it clearer. However, we should never use, we can't expect the grammar of our L1, of our first language, of our native language to fit the Italian grammar. So we should never use the grammar of our L1 when forming Italian phrases and sentences. It won't work, unfortunately. It's all an issue of ordine delle parole. So we're dealing with
so many of you said word order. Grazie mille, Francesco. And I cannot stress it enough. I cannot stress it enough what Francesco said. Do not illegally import the rules of your language. Do not use the same structures. So if you can't use your structures, which structures should you use? Cosa potete usare? So we are going to hopefully solve once and for all, okay? Solve the question of the word order, okay? That's what we're going to do. So, Italian word order. And don't worry, all of this is on today's giveaway that we're going to give you at the end of the lesson in just a couple of minutes. And this will transform the way you write, speak, and think in Italian, so pay attention. There are 4 pillars, 4 pilastri of Italian word order. Uno. This is the standard classical order, which is also common to English. Subject, verb, object. Soggetto, verbo, oggetto. What do we mean by that? Don't get scared. Subject, the person or thing that performs the action. I'm doing something. I love Venice. Io amo, love. The verb represents the action. It describes the action. My action is to love. And my object, the object of the love, l'oggetto, is Venice. I love Venice. Io amo Venezia. Super simple, exactly as in English. This is the standard word order. You start with the one performing the action, then you declare the action, then there's the object of this action. When we change that, we always have a purpose in changing that. There's always a reason. So that was 1. 2, due. The second pillar is, pay attention, fate attenzione. New information goes to the right. New information to the right. This is what I mean. Venezia è una città. Venice is a city. That's our starting point. Venezia è una città. I want to add some information. I want to say it's an Italian city. New information will go to the right. Venezia è una città italiana. We have added something to the right, which also translates as at the end. I want to add some more information. I want to say it's a beautiful Italian city. Venezia è una città italiana bellissima. Okay, and I keep going. I can keep going. I can keep adding stuff to the sentence. Maybe a subordinate or some more information, and it will all come to the right. Keep this in mind for a second. There is more. 3. And this is where things become interesting. The spotlight of the sentence is always on the last word. The last word of the sentence gets the most spotlight, gets the most focus. Venezia è una città italiana bellissima. Venice is a beautiful Italian city, una città italiana bellissima. What I'm trying to underline here is not that it's Italian, not that it's a city, but that it's so incredibly beautiful. By putting bellissima at the end of the sentence, I'm underlining the fact that this is my focal point of the sentence. That's my message. I could say Venezia è una bellissima città italiana. If I want to underline that it's not in Croatia, it's still in Italy, then I would put Italiana as the final focal word, the one that gets the limelight. And finally, this is the magic part. And give it a second. Factual adjectives will always come after the noun, while subjective adjectives can come both before and after. They're flexible like that. So when we said red car, is red the color? Is it a fact or an opinion? Is it a factual noun, or is it a factual adjective, or is it subjective? Do I just see red? And of course, it had to be factual. And that's why we could never say la rossa macchina, because a factual adjective can never precede the noun. When I say Venezia è una città italiana, it's exactly like la macchina rossa, because the Italianity of Venice and the color of the car, they are facts, they're factual adjectives. No way to say italiana città, the same way as you cannot say rossa macchina. Doesn't exist. And yet it's so easy to make a mistake, because in English you say Italian city, red car. Except Italian works differently, because the mind of an Italian speaker works differently. And this is where thinking, actually, the roots of thinking in Italian start. Venezia è una città bellissima. Bellissima is an adjective. Very quickly in the chat, is bellissima factual or subjective? Yes, Joy, Julia, Kristin, Ingrid, yes, 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 so many. Subjective, subjective, subjective. Of course it's subjective. Although, like, I think it's factual, but I think. All right, so ask yourself, is it a fact? Is it a subjective opinion? So we said, if it's subjective, it is flexible. We can put it before, we can put it after. I can also say, Venezia è una bellissima città. And what's different? What's the difference? That we change the order of the words and another word gets the limelight. What do we do if we want to say that it's both beautiful and Italian? We can actually leverage the fact that bellissima can move the way it wants. It's like the queen on a chessboard. It really does what it wants, before or after. But since Italiana cannot go anywhere else, we have to use bellissima first, because it's mobile. Okay? So remember this. If it's factual, it has to follow. Facts have their rigid place in the order of the words, and that's the place that gets the spotlight. Remember this, right? The last word gets the spotlight. So we want the fact to always get the spotlight. If it's a subjective opinion, it's very flexible, it's very mobile, you can play with it, it can come before or after, depending on what you want to underline. Okay? So guys, if you take away anything from today's session, let it be this idea of word order, and let it be also the very, very special cheat sheet that explains stuff that no one else will ever mention or tell you. Okay, so Daniela, if you could please drop the link to the to our today's giveaway into the chat. So everyone who still is with us, oh, only 7 minutes. Come on, guys. Here we go. Grazie, Daniela. You have the link in the chat twice. Maybe give it to the YouTube guys as well. Oh, thank you, thank you. Francesco, apriti anche tu, così ci vedono entrambi. When we have some love in the chat. Thank you, guys. Means a lot. I love this lesson. It's been very informative, says Connie. No one has ever explained this. A revelation, says Jill. Grazie mille, grazie. Thank you, guys. Melissa, no, that I don't know what you mean by bellissima, but if you meant bellissima, you need the noun in between. I love the way you teach, says Don. Grazie, grazie, grazie. How do we copy the link? Denise, you click on it. You click on the link and it opens the, and if not, you just click, maybe right click on it so you can save it to your phone. All right, guys, I compiti. Of course, we have assignments. We can't just let you leave without doing some work, right? So, primo compito. As always, I want to see your takeaways. I enjoy reading them very much. They're very helpful, but most importantly, they're helpful for you because they allow you to process the lesson better. So go ahead and comment on the video with your biggest breakthroughs and takeaways. And the second assignment is part 2 of yesterday's verb assignment. And today I'm asking you to choose 3 Italian nouns that describe your Italian dream. So you don't need anything, but not anything, I mean, you just need nouns. So it can be, I don't know, gelato, biscotti, mare, anything. But the only rule to this game is I want you to choose 3 words that you have to look up in a dictionary. So don't use words you already know in Italian. Come up with 3 words that you would like to describe your dream with that are connected to your dream, but you need to go and look them up. Okay? That's your assignment. And tomorrow, you will discover why it was your assignment yesterday and today. Tomorrow, we're going to dive into the magical world of Italian vocabulary, how to master it, how to learn it in a way that will allow you to actually retain it. Okay? So I can't wait. This is a lesson I absolutely love, and I'm sure that you will enjoy it very much as well. So, Francesco, you want to say 2 words just to say goodbye?
Grazie per oggi, è stato molto bello. Spero che vi sia piaciuto. I hope you enjoyed today bootcamp. And thank you. Thank you for
And
all your love
you
in the
will see
chat.
Francesco one more time.
You will.
Quando ti rivedranno.
Ci rivediamo venerdì. On
Ci
Friday.
rivediamo.
Venerdì, on Friday, I'll see you again. And you see me again, of course.
Okay, guys. So, Francesco, grazie mille. Thank you
Grazie, Tania.
for your
Grazie.
contribution today. It was a great thing to have someone give me a hand with explanations. So we should do this again.
Certo.
Grazie, Francesco, veramente. Grazie a tutti. Thank you, everyone. I can't wait to see you all tomorrow for another day and another session of 3D learning of Italian.